or what we like to call killer whales, are extremely intelligent as well. And we see that and visit that often. However, they are restricted to the environment upon which they are created. They are not crawling out of the ocean, like I said before, and building a Rolls Royce. They're not jumping up into the sky and flapping their fins and becoming birds. They are species that are developed within the environment upon which that is their domain. For instance, the elephant may be the smartest animal in the African environment, but it's hard to say. But these do not become other animals. The species have a particular frequency, just like you have a frequency. Your entire body, your cellular structure, your molecules all operate at a particular frequency. Let's say, for mathematics' sake, 100 megahertz. The horse may be 50. The whale may be whatever, 90. You cannot become a horse. You cannot reincarnate into a cow. All of this is nothing but religious nonsense. You are developed as the highest manifestation with the greatest intelligence and the greatest choice. You are the only manifestation that has been created with choice, for good or for ill, but you are given that. You are created in your Father's image or God's image. And so these creatures are part of the structure of the planet. They will evolve from the single stage amoeba into the many different species that eventually will grow over millions of years and evolve. But they will not become people, and people will not become them. I listened once to some guy on Coast to Coast who says, well, I remember 80 different incarnations as an animal. But just think about that. Imagine your intelligence and your ability and your forthright, your inheritance to expand it, create more of it, understand more of it. Imagine now that you are restricted into the body of an ant. You can do none of those things. It is literally a lifetime that would be totally a waste. It is not, it is against your creative potential. And so when we talk about species that are coming to visit us, it is because we have no desire, and that's the problem. It's not like we don't have the ability. It's not like the information is not available. Any biochemist will tell it to you. Any exobiologist will tell it to you. We don't want to grasp the fundamentals. We are not taught, like the speech people teach their children from the very beginning, the fundamentals, so that they understand how things work. And better yet, if they want to see how it works, they jump in a ship and they go. They go to a system which is still in the development stage and where the dinosaurs are roaming, and they fly by and they record it and watch it and everything like that. Like we would do a television station, but they do and see the real thing. So they are educated, and they come from a system where truth and reality is one and the same. And there is no conflict between them. That's why they're more advanced than we are, because we are always questioning ourselves. Is that true? Is that true? Did this happen to me? Did I imagine this? Was that projected from somebody else? I mean, we are bombarded by our own thoughts, which we can hardly control. We are bombarded by everybody else's thoughts, which we cannot control. You are also susceptible to the thoughts that are broadcast, and we have satellites in orbit that have broadcast thought control. They started initial experimentation using color projection, and they found by certain color projection broadcast over certain areas of populations, the people suddenly became inexplicably aggressive and wanting to fight and having problems. And then using other colors, we have advanced ourselves in this particular system in order to negate the very thing that we need so badly, and that is truth. And I will tell you one thing a space person told me: learn to love the truth above all else. It's not your truth, it's not my truth, it's not anybody else's truth, it's the truth. Understand that, and the pages will roll by.
Okay, thank you. Ken, anything else?
What about the other question I asked you? Are we the only species in our neighborhood, in our solar system, our galaxy, that are like this?
Are we? Yes. I mean, there is the same differential as we have on our planet. You have to understand that nature works under specific principles. The concept that nature and creation is chaotic can only be proposed by a moron, because nature produces and operates. The trees grow according to principle, the grass grows according to principle, the planet works according to principle. The only one who screws up principle is us. And so once you understand principle, you understand how creation is unified. And we have a huge dispersity of people. Go to the Kalahari, and you will find people that are what 3.5 feet tall. They're not mutants. They're not, whatever. They're pygmies. They are perfectly anatomically correct. Go then into the jungle and go to the Watusi, where they're 7.5 feet tall. And in fact, if you look on research, I think the tallest guy was 8 foot 9 inches tall. He wasn't some kind of freak. It is the disparity of human creation, the diversity that we're supposed to be embracing. Embrace your brother, embrace your mother and father, and man and woman. Embrace the different colors. Well, nature is giving you the opportunity. You can go from short, you can go to tall, and it doesn't make any difference. Some of these crafts come from areas where the people are a little shorter, 4.5 feet. When I used to travel in South America, I would see the older generation, the grandmothers, they couldn't have been an inch over 4.5 feet, and they looked just fine like everybody else. They didn't look like some kind of horrific monster out of the Star Wars movie. We need to get over the fact that there are variations in skin color, hair color, eye color. Some have almond eyes, others don't. But basically, you're still coming from the human genome. The human DNA, RNA and DNA is universal. Now, they have made a few refinements to theirs because they have found, like we have now recently found, that we can make adjustments into DNA so that we can alleviate the gene that causes MS or certain cancers or other things like this. They too, being 4,000 years at least ahead of us, have come to these conclusions a long time ago. In fact, we use more of that on our livestock. We use genetic manipulation on horses so they run faster and get bigger. Our cows give more milk, or our livestock give more meat. We use that genetic manipulation more on them than we do on trying to alleviate the many different problematic consequences of the many diseases and cancers and stuff like that, most of which we are pumping into the atmosphere ourselves. 8,000 pounds of carcinogens that cause cancer We pop in that atmosphere in one spot and let it roam the planet. And well, look at Fukushima too, out of Japan. That went all the way across the Pacific, impacted the west coast of the United States. I mean, we have a lot to answer for.
Okay, let's move to Cam again. Cam?
Yeah, sorry, I had a few more questions. The next really big question that I had was, I've heard a lot about ETs that are actually human from the future. Rendlesham Forest, allegedly, the landing of the 3 nights in a row, allegedly they were from the future. And so with that said, if they're from the future, then that means that our civilization has made it. And so did you ever hear, and did George ever hear or be told that because they can time travel, that they can space travel, they can time travel using basically the same adjustment of frequency and so forth, that they have traveled to the future, or they come from the future, and that they know, in fact, that we've gotten past this and that we have, finally gotten to like their level?
My information has been that Rendlesham, along with other Scottish installations, also with installations within the United States and South America, are military oriented. This is our testing and development, like Area 51. This is our testing and development where we fiddle around with technology to see what happens. Let us look at the concept of time travel logically. Let's say you want to go back in time and have lunch with Julius Caesar. Well, in reality, Julius Caesar was killed, burnt on a funeral pyre, and his cells dispersed into the atmosphere. One may be in Italy, another one may be in you, one may be in the cabbage in Egypt. In other words, it spread out everywhere, that which constructed that particular individual. In order to reassemble that, you would have to pull those elements and destroy literally wherever they were inhabiting in order to try to put together a non-natural event. There is no time travel. What there is your ability to go to places where a particular time is being exhibited. So let's say, for instance, you want to see, how to make it simple. Let's say you want to see a society that is still living in the Wild West stage. So you go out into the space and you find a planet which is under that stage of development, and then you can watch it and see it. You don't necessarily have to go there personally, because you can sit in front of a television screen the size of your living room and you can see this live right by yourself, as well as allowing it to tune into you and to show you your past lives and who and what you've been and done at the same time. That is something that sometimes is not very pleasant, because we have not always been very nice people. But so you could say, well, did I go back in time? Only figuratively, because you went to visit a place which exhibits the behavior of that time. Now I want to go to the future. Well, I go in my spaceship and I travel to the next system, which is 10,000 years more developed than us, and I get to see what they have developed and how they live and how different they are from us. That is our potential future, but it is not our specific future, because we have decisions that we make and directions that we go. And so the whole thing is not just like television, snap your finger. I remember in the 60s, it's about time, it's about space, about two men in a strange place, and all this other stuff. It doesn't, from nature's principle standpoint, you just do not jump into a machine and go forward and back and expect it. The worst thing you're going to do is dematerialize yourself into an atomic state, and then you aren't there anymore. So we need to move away from science fantasy, and we have grasped it so much instead of reality. Science reality versus science fiction. We need to learn and know the difference, because then it opens your life up to the next phase of the things that you mentioned that you want to experience, and the ability for your thoughts to be clear so that those up there can read your thoughts and say, this person is progressing and is on along a proper line. Let's give him an opportunity. Maybe do a flyby for his awareness. But contact doesn't come by them walking up to you and tapping you in the shoulder. No legitimate space person ever comes out and says, I am from Venus, or I am from Saturn, or I am from Wolf 359. They never do that. Those are charlatans, and I can name the ones walking around that are doing that.
Yes.
Because this totally puts them in jeopardy, and they're not going to put themselves in jeopardy and you jeopardy at the same time. Let's say you're standing somewhere, and for the moment your thoughts are clear. You're not consumed with who's on the phone, did the girlfriend call, what's for dinner, what's my homework for school, blah, blah, blah. The thousands of things that we permeate our brains and our thoughts with that really mean absolutely nothing. Let's say your thoughts are clear, and one of these space people, and it may be a man, or it may be a man and a woman, because women do not travel alone. They always travel with a companion. So, are you still there? Yeah, I see you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what happens is they will stand there and they will send you a thought to see if you're receptive to that thought. Turn and look at me, let's say. You pick up the thought and you respond to it. You turn and you look at them. And the moment you look at them, you recognize the source of that thought. And that next thought comes to you, I know who you are. Now you've opened the door, and further communication will work. I'll give you an example. 89, Father and I in Europe doing UFO convention for Michael Hazeman, thousands of people. And we saw at least 9 space people. They came to us along with the Soviet scientists and whatever. My father had only 2 years to live. Perhaps that's what they realized too. So I was busy. I was busy talking to people. There was a lot of activity going on. All of a sudden, my father takes his foot and stomps on my foot under the table. And I look at him like, what the hell are you doing? That didn't feel good. And so he looked at me and he glanced over. And I didn't pay any attention. I went about my thing. He did it again. This time I paid attention. And I glanced over and I recognized one of them. And he was staring me straight in the face and smiling. And I thought to myself, just like in the day the earth stood still with the scientist, I have about 1 million questions I want to ask you. And so he turned around and walked up the short steps around the corner to the restroom. One door, no windows. And I said, bingo, I get my chance. Up I go, and I'm about 4 seconds behind him. I go into that bathroom, open the door, and walk in. Not a soul is in that room. Nobody. No stalls, no nothing. And there was no place to go. And because he could read my mind. And so what happened is, I thought to myself, damn it, I shouldn't be so open with my thoughts. I should be a little bit careful. So I walked out of the bathroom. 3 yards away, he's standing there smiling, waving at me, because he read my mind and knew it. So the next thing I did is my father was going to lecture. So I had the camera set up to video it. And he came into the far door a little earlier as the other people were coming in. And I watched him intently. And he walked down the row, and there was a young child there with his parents. And he stopped and petted him on the hair and talked to him a little bit, because Like Jesus said, let the children come to me. So in my mind, I'm going, I got the camera. It's ready to go and loaded. I could film this. And I'm thinking to myself, you have been taught since the age of 4 or 5 that you don't do this without permission and without thought. And so I struggled with myself saying, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Bang, bang, bang. So finally, after about 30 seconds, I let the camera to the side and decided not to do it. And he looked up to me and smiled and then walked off and sat on the other side of the room. In the meantime, Bud Hopkins was giving his little spiel and scaring the crap out of everybody, as his specialty was. And my father said, we've got to do something to try to counter some of this negativity. So we went upstairs on the second platform and we sat there in the far corner, and he started to furiously rewrite his speech. And 3 tables over were 3 of them sitting, 1 woman, 2 men. And so the girl gets up and she walks over and she says, I'd like to take a picture of you 2. And Dad and I both looked up and said, yeah, because we were mind where else where we say, yeah, okay, be my guest. And she says, we know who you are very well. And we know that you will take care of what is going downstairs. And sure enough, Dad went down there and he started his lecture by saying, now that we have heard enough about people getting the crap scared out of them and being frightened to death, let's talk about something more productive. The entire room stands up and applauds. I still have that video. And that was another one of them. So, but
Fantastic.
anyway, anyone who tells you that you can summon the space people is a liar. You cannot.
Okay.
They make that decision, and they observe the situation very closely for your benefit and for them, because they are responsible. They don't live like we do here and just go and do whatever we want and then say, oh, well, too bad. The rest is your problem. That's not them. That's not how they live. Every motion they make has purpose. Every motion they make. That's why their lives are so much richer than ours.
Okay.
Thank you so much. One more real quick. This might have already been the answer of what you just said to this next question, but I've always wanted to know, in the 80s when Reagan allegedly kind of warfared the sky, so all the satellites that went up that have scalar weaponry and so forth, is that why we haven't really seen the flying saucers that they used to see back in the 50s and 60s that come down real close, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they're right above you? Where last night, I went out with my group last night again for San Diego, since it's near the new moon, and we went out and we saw 3 different stationary craft, but they were just lights way, way, way up there that were just flashing at us stationary, but they don't come down real close so we can actually see the ship or anything like that. Is that part of the reason because it's not safe for them to do that, or is it something else?
Well, remember in earlier times, we lived in a less technological age in which we had less intrusion from radar and surveillance as we have today. Today, there are very few places that are non-radar environment. I give you an example. One flight I flew was down the eastern mountains of the Andes on my way to Buenos Aires. And there's a section of the jungle down there, which is quite amazing, because when you see some of the thunderstorms, you see storms to 60,000 feet. You see roll lightning where the lightning jumps horizontally between clouds. I mean, when you see some of these atmospheric things, it is eye-opening. But there are areas where there is a non-radar environment because simply they are non-inhabitable. And for, an hour or about 450 miles worth of jet time, it is black like a curtain. And all of a sudden, I'm watching out, I'm looking out the left side, and I see a device that is kind of is glowing, but is slightly octagonal in shape, very much like the shot that was taken by the Gemini spacecraft. And so I see it coming out of the jungle and hovering and then zipping up into space. And the other guys, they looked at it, big deal, they don't pay a lot of attention. And so, but this was a non-radar environment. And I think that there are less and less of these places. I will tell you that it's in the book as well, and I have some photos. We purchased, when we were with George told us about where there was a base in Mexico in the state of Michoacan. And he would often go down to the Lake Chapala area outside Guadalajara and then go to that base. So in 1968, we went down and bought a piece of property towards the foothill of that mountain, about 3,000 feet in altitude. And we had a large ranch. We had cattle and flowers and avocados and pears and all that. We ran a working ranch. But there were times when you could see the ships come and fly towards the mountain and then behind the mountain and disappear. So my father said, well, let's take a little drive. So we loaded up in the car and we drove up this dirt road till it ended somewhere base of the mountain, probably about 4 or 5 miles away. And there was a small village. And so we got out and some people came and talked to us. And my father said to them, he said, you seem nervous or uncomfortable with us. Have you not seen people like us before? And the one guy says, we've seen people like you come out of the forest, dressed nicely in Western business attire, walked down the dirt road until they hit the main road, which was paved where the bus came by. They got in a bus and drove off. And we never see them come back. And so, of course, the first question I always get is, well, why didn't you go to the base? And it's very simple. You don't go unless you're invited. You don't intrude upon somebody else's hospitality, because they have reasons for why they do and don't do things. It's not that we didn't see them. We met with them at a different location that was called San Jose Perua, which was a resort, maybe 40 minutes away. But we didn't go up there to intrude upon their base. And on top of it, they can just put a magnetic shield in front of it and you would never see it. You could walk right past it and never see it. So, some people say, well, you've seen them. Yeah, that's wonderful. Have you been close to ships? Yeah, that's wonderful. Have you been ever aboard? I said, no, I haven't. Because I'm honest. I could make it up. Gee, I could be like so many other people in this field who just make stuff up because they know that they're never called on the carpet to prove it. And I don't produce anything that I can't prove. And so I said, no, I haven't had a ride, but that doesn't disappoint me. I mean, if I think of how so much of what I had, why would I be disappointed with what I don't? And then I think to myself, now that I'm medically retired from flying, I no longer have the jeopardy that I would have normally if I was, I've always been vocal, but I have not been flagrant. And so at this particular time in my life, there may become a point in the future where that opportunity comes about, or where I'm in a position where I can take some new film or whatever. I keep an open mind and an open heart, and I leave those decisions to those who are much wiser than I am. Let me show you one picture. Let's see. Can you see this picture, or the share is off?
Share's off.
Okay. Here. What the hell is it here? See it now?
Yes.
This picture, only one of its kind, 1970 Mariner 10, of the planet Venus.
Whoa.
Now, Venus, according to the schmoes they want to tell you, is 800 degrees Fahrenheit. The winds are 400 miles an hour. The atmosphere is 6 times denser than oil. Yet we somehow managed to land a probe with a parachute. That's got to be something else. But when you look at this, look at the clouds, look at the formation, look at the blue like water, look at the polar ice caps on both ends. You think you're being told the truth?
Is this a NASA shot?
Yeah.
Interesting. It said that there are colonies on Venus.
I can only tell you that from the people that I met, they're extremely hospitable, very caring, and very conscientious of being their brother's keeper and helping when they can help. They have lives too. They have purpose as well. And yet they still remember us because, like you mentioned with time travel, for them, coming to Earth is like going back 4,000 years in their own development. They get to see how they were 4,000 years ago because that's how we are now.
Mhm.
So there's your time travel for you.
Glenn, I wanted to ask you about an event in George Adamski's life. I understand he visited the Vatican and had a meeting with the Pope. Is that correct?
That's absolutely true. In 1963, on his second world tour in May of 63, 2 weeks before Pope John the 23rd died, George was given a sealed message by his space friends to deliver to the Pope. So George went dutifully off to the Vatican with 2 witnesses, May Morley Flitcroft and Lou Zinstag. May remained our friend and loyal to George her entire life. She passed away about, maybe 7, 8 years ago. And I inherited all her archive. I have all her material and everything.
Yeah.
Lou Zinstag was a person who turned very aggressive and skeptical. So George cut association with her. Long story short, the 3 of them went to the Vatican. They watched George go to a side entrance where there was a young priest waiting, took George inside, and George went up into a private apartment, not the papal apartment, but the John the 23rd preferred another room that looked towards the back. Instead of looking out towards the courtyard, he liked one that looked out towards the back because the back of the Vatican is all with gardens and things like that. And the first thing the Pope said was, "Oh boy, am I glad to see you. I've been waiting for this." And so, and George wasn't the only visitor. There were other visitors too, in succession. And George talked to him, and they exchanged some information. And the Pope instructed one of the cardinals to give George the Papal Medal of Honor, which I have in the safe, which is Vatican II. I believe it says from 2, let there be 1. And George had that 2 weeks before the Pope died. And I have a good friend in the Vatican. He's a Vatican historian. And you can also go on the Vatican website and look at the type of medallions that were issued and when. And George had his before the Vatican officially released that medal after the Pope's death. And the Archbishop of Canterbury said that these type of things just don't go to anybody. There are specific reasons that this is awarded to somebody.
Did George ever go on a UFO? Did he ever ride on one?
Absolutely, many times. He went out into space and orbited the Earth. He described it. He went around the moon and described it. That's one of the reasons why we did the NASA investigation and the pictures that were in the book Alien Bases on the Moon, which we have as book 2 now because I made some added some stuff to it. And so he described atmosphere, clouds, mist, water vapor, some vegetation, even some animal life, and also, of course, bases, alien bases. And boy, did they ever give him grief for that. And now today we know all of it is true.
Okay, very interesting. I was going to comment on the fact that you were talking about DNA.
Can I get home
And-
safe?
It seems that many of the ETs that we see pictures of or described seem to have the same physiognomy that we have. They have 2 arms, legs, toes, fingers, eyes, nose. That to me says that that portion of DNA that grows your body is pretty much pervasive through at least our galaxy, if not the universe. Or is it just strictly evolutionary factors that force it into that shape?
No, it's pervasive throughout the cosmos, not just the galaxy, not just the solar system, the entire cosmos.
Interesting. Well, Jason, you have some more questions? Your hand is still up.
Yeah, I just have one quick question I forgot to ask before. Just so I was clear, those pictures you showed earlier, and I believe I heard you say magnets and stuff like that. I guess I'll get your opinion on Bob Lazar really quick here, but do you
That's
believe?
about
Do you
all the
believe?
opinion you're going to get from me about Bob Lazar.
Yeah, I mean, do you believe in the periodic table element 115 where he described it, and then 8 years ago they actually reproduced it where it's an element that distorts gravity?
First of all,
I mean, so
First of all,
you're saying you believe that these crafts are they use magnets for propulsion? What is your theory?
What happens here is, first of all, there's no such thing as anti-gravity. There is pro-gravity. Let me give you an example here. And let's see if I can find my share screen again and do this. Here are some of the diagrams showing the properties of the magnets and how they are rotated in order to produce a field. This is one of them, and you have to forgive some of this because these diagrams were filmed on 8mm film because the originals were destroyed in 1970 in a house fire. So we have cleaned them up the very best we possibly can. But if you look at that and you look here, now that's just showing you the magnet property. Let's see here. Here we go. You look here, you will find that there are a series of round oscillating magnets that help to produce a field. And there are 3 ball condensers underneath the craft. One here you'll see. And by shifting the magnetic charge from one to the other and back, because it's triangular in shape, this allows for the motion. It's a part of it, at least. And so, like I said, this is an extremely old form of craft. And so, oh, you'll like this here. Remember old Stanton Friedman? Yeah, he says, yeah, the spaceships have been visiting us and they get capable of speeds of 25,000 miles an hour. I gave that one to Prometheus to use. I'm trying to find the mothership. Here we go. Here's the mothership. Along the circumference of the mothership on the outside hull are a series of magnetic bands. let's say, a third in size or whatever. And these bands rotate in opposite spinning directions at varying speeds along the axis of the mothership. And that is part of the propulsion system because they are using the energy that comes from the planet. The planet is in a giant Van de Graaff generator. And I'm sure you've seen some of these experiments with the Tesla coils and things like that, where you can see the static electricity emanating from the orb. Well, your planet produces hundreds of billions of trillions of volts of energy. And if you take a pebble and drop it into a calm bucket of water, you'll see the waves generate away from the impact area. Those waves are a good example of how the electromagnetic source emanates away from the planet. So, since these waves travel the speed of magnetism, which is twice the speed of light, 360,000 miles per second, you can, like you get into the riptide of the ocean to help carry you out to go surfing, you get onto the wave and it carries you at its speed in the direction it's going until you intercept the waves that are coming from a different location, let's say the next planet like Mars. You tune in that frequency and let the waves carry you that direction. That's how they go from place to place. And what I tell people is the ones that are so infatuated with Star Trek and Star Wars, and I like a good program too. But what I try to tell people is,
I do have to interrupt.
Okay.
You there. I do recall watching something recently because you didn't mention Nikolai Tesla earlier, where he did I watched a documentary where he said he had a moment of telepathy where he was told of using electricity in the atmosphere to create this abundance of energy, and he was working on it, and he lived a pretty long life, but apparently the government seized all his papers hours after he died. But
that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Well, Tesla, you could say he was a genius. I would say that he had contact, and to some extent he was one of them. Also, Marconi intercepted radio signals from Mars, and they tried very hard to subdue that. What I try to remind people is, look at this photograph here, and look at the star field. Now, mind you, you look into space and you see what your eye can see. And then you take a pair of binoculars, and all of a sudden you see greater depth and greater manifestations. You move to a telescope, it's even more. You move to a telescope in space and orbit, it's even more. So think about it. Traveling through space is not like warp speed Scotty. You have to have very precise instrumentation and navigation in order not to run into something, get pulled into something, or have catastrophic accidents. There are gigantic magnetic storms in space. This is not for the nonchalant. And when you see that, you begin to understand the immense technology and understanding that's necessary in order to travel space. That's why I tell people we blame everything on the space people. We love to be victims. We play the psychological game of victimization. Something happened to me, something didn't happen to me. It was good or it was bad, whatever. But the idea is that it takes an immense amount of knowledge to travel space, and instead of accusing them of all this bizarre nonsense, which seems to be the marketing ploy these days, we should respect them for their ability, because it is no game for idiots.
Jason, can we let Angie speak?
Yeah,
You've
no,
spoken before.
that's good. That answered my question. Thank you.
Angie? Do you?
Hi, thank you. I was unmuting. I wanted to ask the speaker, thank you for giving me a chance, but you were saying that you cannot summon the space people. So I wanted to ask your opinion on Stephen Greer and his CE5 movement.
Well, the statement stands. You cannot summon the space people, period. They decide if, when, and how they wish to make contact. Because anybody who says that they can draw the space people to them is a charlatan. Because that's not how it works. It just doesn't work that way, because they have to take, I just can't pick up a phone line and order myself a private jet, to come and bring my friends to me. It doesn't work that way. These people are traveling the cosmos at millions of miles per second. They are going about business and purpose that is indicative to their lives and their society. They're not there for our entertainment. And so if they happen to fly by, I give you an example, considering what the question you asked. Many years ago, there was a conference called, what's it called in the desert? It was
Contact in the Desert?
Contact in the Desert. And since they were talking about Van Tassel, and George's contact point is literally just a few miles around the corner, I said, I will be happy to give you a presentation, show you original photographs and films free of charge. You don't have to even pay for my hotel and meals, and I'll be happy to participate. Their answer was no. They were not interested. And so consequently, this very nice lady by the name of Barbara Harris, who is a historian in that area of Joshua Tree, she was giving tours out to Giant Rock. And so she invited me to come along. And as it turned out, I did it for a couple of years, I think 2 or 3 years. And we would go out there to, they drive by Van Tassel's Armatron, which is basically nothing, just a wooden building. It has no function whatsoever. But anyway, you go out to Giant Rock, and then everybody got their chairs, had a little meal, and we had this nice discussion. So I said to the people, we are sitting right underneath 5 approach paths to Los Angeles International Airport. I know, I fly them every week. So we will see airplanes, but they are easily identifiable. You've got a green and red navigation light and a blinking strobe. Sure enough, yeah, you could see it. I said the next thing you can see are satellites. The satellites do not give off their own source of light. They reflect from whatever source is coming across the terminator from the sun. So they're usually very weak, and they go very slow. It takes about 3 minutes for a satellite to cross the horizon. The next thing you'll see is the International Space Station. Pull it up on your phone, and you will see its orbit. And sure enough, there it came by, and everybody watched it. I said the last thing is what we call high flyers, or UFOs that are operating either within our atmosphere or outside our atmosphere on the edges of it. I said you will see them do things like go across the sky in a matter of 30 seconds. That's no satellite. No satellite can go that fast. You will see them change direction or come together, like I read on this report here from the airline pilot, where they rotate around each other and starburst and then fly into space and do these things. We saw that too, right? And then I said, and you also have to understand that these craft, as they skip across the top of the ionosphere, will tend to blink isn't the word, but fade in and fade out a little bit, fade in and fade out. because the atmosphere is a variable spinning mass. And so that isn't meaning that we are summoning them to blink for us so that we can feel special that they are giving us their attention. This is a matter of how they function. Well, we saw those things. It was one of the rare times it happens. Doesn't happen all the time. And that next day, we went back to the convention. It was on a Friday night. And on Saturday, everybody, all 50 of those people, were talking like there was no tomorrow about what they had seen. That night, Mr. Greer's wife decides to take out a group of people and go out there, and wouldn't you behold that they said they saw exactly the same thing. Anyone who tells you that they need bodyguards to protect themselves because they're in danger of what they say is full of it. They can, if you are that much of a threat, they can kill you anytime, any place. And I'm talking about our agents. You go out to the restaurant to have something to eat. Somebody goes in your room, smears a little juice on your toothbrush. You come back, brush your teeth, bang, fall dead like a heart attack. If they want you dead, you're dead. And no amount of bodyguards is going to make a difference. This is bait. This is a ploy psychologically used on people to make them believe that somebody is so important or has something so of such value that you must listen to them. And I learned that foolishness long ago.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
We're past our 3-hour time slot, but Angie, do you have anything else?
Perhaps that, when you say that, well, it sounded to me like you were saying we're the only ones on this side of the galaxy or the only planet with problems. Were you meaning here in our solar system or in all of the universe? Because I can't imagine we would be the only planet with problems.
We aren't anybody any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
I want you to think of it like this. And if you really want to learn some good information about the space people and ourselves, I have a course, a 3 little booklet course called Telepathy. And it's not just about telepathy. First of all, telepathy is a picture language, not a sign language. Nobody channels anything through anybody. If you want somebody to get a message, you go and give it to them, because they know how stupid we are. We don't even understand the words that are spoken to us, let alone a message that we don't know how to decipher. Telepathy is an excellent course, and I highly recommend it. It's not very expensive. It's $6 a booklet. If you want to, write to me, I'll get it to you. However, the universe, or let's say all of creation, first of all, there is no such thing as the Big Bang. Even the guy who developed the theory of the Big Bang, when he died, before he died, the article which I saved, he said, that was all nonsense. This was just an idea I had in my head, and somebody decided to run off with the concept, but there is no such thing as a Big Bang. There is no beginning, and there is no ending. And this is a very hard concept for people to grasp, because for there to be a beginning, there has to be something that supports the beginning. It's like an atom. In order to have an atom, you have to have a molecule smaller to support it, whether it's a quark or whatever, which in fact goes faster than the speed of light. So we know that Einstein theory is out the window too. And so the universe is a ladder of education. Let us say that this solar system, which is true, for the most part, is one of the lower developed planets in the solar system. So let's say it represents grade 10. If you go to another solar system, they will have lower grades, because in order for you to get here, you had to have come from somewhere else. And for order to go somewhere else, you have to be able to get there. So it is a ladder of development. And so if you are right now expressing yourself on ladder rung number 10, you have a decision. Do I advance to 11 and eventually 12 and so on and so forth without end? Or do I decide to do what I want and to ignore the consequences and to exhibit the more barbaric characteristics and reverse ourselves and fall lower? So the entire idea, the entire ability of your advancement is completely your decision.
Jason, do you have anything more?
Yeah, I got a quick question. I'll make it quick because I know we're over. Just wanted his quick opinion on, you list them up ever since Roswell and everything that dates back to everything that's going on with, the men in black suits and conspiracies and all that. My question is, do you believe that there's still something going on, and where is it? So, initially it was, Wright-Patterson base, and then it was Area 51, and now my research is saying Dugway Proving Grounds out in Utah.
It's in Alaska.
It's in Alaska.
Over the last 25 to 30 years, the majority of operations have moved to eastern Alaska, which is borders along the Canadian wilderness.
Yeah, I
And-
know they have that national preserve up there too,
Yeah.
which does not allow any humans, or they don't allow anybody up there.
And they've done that because Area 51 has over time garnered enough publicity and enough attention that for them to do what they really want to do, it would be restricted, but they're not stupid. What they do is they move 80% of their operation to Alaska and they leave 20% in 51, because that way people will see a few things flying around and their attention will remain on Area 51. If they would suddenly stop it altogether, then people would start wondering and looking around and maybe discover the new location. So they're not stupid. I mean, it's not difficult to think like they do because it's pretty common. And we have developed technology that we have recovered. That's true. We have gone through some atomic, the Aurora project. I forgot the designation for the last one, which is the upgrade of the SR-71. And so, but we had a lot of interim stuff because we have a two-tier development system. We have the military system and the aviation system, like you would find at Skunk Works in Palmdale. All right. And these people are dealing with aerodynamics and aircraft appendages and things like that. Any craft that has wings, appendages, landing pods, triangular, acorn shaped, this is all our stuff. None of it is extraterrestrial, because the extraterrestrial stuff has to remain within a tubular or elliptical configuration for the energy to flow cohesively at such speeds without hindrance or without destroying the hull of the craft. So 65% of what is seen these days is our own stuff, plus we got some drones and remote control stuff on the civilian side too, and what have you. So about 12%, maybe 15 if we want to be generous, but I'd say about 12% does not come from this planet. And what has happened is that the group that works on aerodynamics, they are working on the Aurora and these kind of craft. They're using conventional methods and just trying to find more combustible components in order to push something faster. But like an onion, this whole thing, including our government, is multiple layered. And in more dense layers, you have an entirely different departments that are working on the magnetic side of things, the electrostatic things, and both sides do not talk to one another. Just like how funny it is that the Navy had their own UFO, division and the Air Force there and the Marines there, and everybody had their CIA had their own divisions, and they didn't trade information with each other at all.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're all compartmentalized.
Yeah, what a
They're all in
strange,
their own silos.
yes, what a strange system we have. And so what happens is that so you have multiple levels of development, just like you have multiple levels of government. Either the outer level of what you see in Washington, these fools, is nothing. This is there for your entertainment. The real government is a world government, and that is a deep inner core. And we're not talking about the Illuminati and the Rothschilds and these are upper core stuff either. There is much deeper core that determines what goes on this world and where it happens and why it happens.
Well, thank you, Glenn Steckling. We've taken you over 3 hours and you've been very generous in your time. I think we should probably officially close it at this time, but we can stay on longer if there are people that may have questions. But Glenn, again, we want to thank you very much for all your good information, and we'll be looking for your book to come out.
I will let you.
By the way, before you leave,
Mhm.
do you want to do a pitch for your conference that you plan to have in November?
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about it because it's a relatively new concept. But what's happening is I've decided that I want to put together a little Adamski symposium on November 4th, which is a Saturday of 2023 this year, up at Oak Knoll Campground, which is the old Palomar Gardens property of Alice and George. And they still have a few original structures. They have a couple of cabins. The owner is going to put up a couple of Airstream trailers for people as well. And they have a small audience hall in which we were going to have a talk. And that will start at 12 noon. We'll have a little lunch there. At 1 o'clock, we'll do a talk. We'll show the videos from Desert Center that I will have done by then. We will also have a drone do a flyby of Palomar Gardens from the air so people can get a good look up there. And I will walk people around and show them where the craft landed and things like that. So we'll make a few hour a day of it. And you know, if people want to spend the night, I suggest the Lazy H Ranch, which is about 10 miles down the hill next to Palma Valley. They also have Caesar's Harrah's casino, but they are ridiculously expensive. And so some of us will stay there, and I will arrive on a Friday night because I want to sit there with the campfire, and hopefully if the sky is clear, do some star watching. I may be able to figure out my 8-inch telescope and bring it up there as well. So that's basically what we're putting together, and it's open to the public. Whoever wants to come, be my guest. And like I said, everybody has different ideas and multiple thoughts, and you know, all of them are welcome. So
Would you like
Is
to
that free to attend?
yes,
put a contact up on our chat so that people can contact you about it? Or where should they go to find out more information?
didn't I send you the
Yes, and I did send out the information with the newsletter. If anybody has any questions about this, just drop me an email at willw31@gmail and wilw31@gmail, and I can send you the information I have that Glenn provided.
Yeah, and I'll put it up on the website soon. It's like I said, this has come to fruition. You know, in a relative short period of time. I was out in Desert Center filming at the Adamski site and comparing the old pictures and the locations with the new pictures. So, you know, I'll plan to put that all together in DVD form. But yeah, we are not charging for it. If people want to put something in the contribution till, that's totally up to you. And like I said, we do not profit and we do not exploit this field. That is not what it is about, regardless of what you see out there today.
And your website is?
Adamski Foundation, one word, .com.
Okay.
And
Oh.
my web designer recently put the link on there to last week's podcast about disclosure, or what shall we call it, the fallacy of disclosure. And so you'll be able to see it there as well.
Well, thanks again, Glenn. We really appreciate your presentation and information. Okay, folks, if there are no other comments or questions, we'll close it down. I have made a recording of this. So if you would like to get a recording, again, contact me and I can send the recording to you. You can look at it again. Okay, and thanks all of you folks for showing up. We sort of had, I think at one time, 39 people, which is a record for our particular Zoom session. So hopefully we'll have a nice presentation next month too. So thank you all, and we'll end it now and see you
Hey,
next month.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you all for attending. I know some of you wanted to talk. I'm sure Barbara wanted to have some comments, and so we can do this again sometime and explore some various subjects. And just let me know, and I will do the best I can to accommodate.
Hey, Glenn, where in Eastern Canada or where in Eastern Alaska?
Well, to tell you the truth, I don't personally know the exact location. I think that they are clever enough to do some of it underground, and so all I can say is I would take out aeronautical chart of that particular, or a topographical chart of that particular area, that area east of Fairbanks.
Yeah.
I know there's a pretty well-sized base there. I would assume that they would have shifted it to a lesser known spot that feeds off of it, but that's where I would start. I would begin my investigation. And then, as you well know, they protect their secret areas very well, just like Roswell, just like Area 51. And so it's not one of those things where you want to go a hike to sit in the woods, because their sensors and surveillance equipment will expose you very quickly.
Yeah, I heard about a rise in sightings up in Alaska, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, everyone, have a very
Hey,
good evening.
thanks,
Thank
folks.
you. Good
Good
night.
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 By the way, there you might want to check
Good
the
night.
chat before I close down. There are several messages on the chat that might interest you.
Okay. Mute Oregon Monty. Have a good night. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. There we go. Okay. Well, I thank everybody for their comments, and like I said, there is a lot to talk about, and reasonable, rational, intelligent people should be able to communicate in such a way as to make life more worthwhile.
Okay, folks, I'm going to close down now. So we'll see you next month.
Good night, Will.